doesn't take competence or courage to pass a budget that only has R's on it. Because that is how you live and achieve and score short-term political points. And with the help of shock jocks and troll farms, you can fool some of the people some of the time.
Welcome back to Square Off. That was just a sample of Republican Senate President Warren Peterson's very pointed point of personal privilege aimed squarely at Republican leaders of the House and some of his own members. House members were beating the drum for a government shutdown. Peterson tried to talk some sense into them. Republicans can't go it alone on the budget, he said, when a Democratic governor's veto stamp has the final say. And a bipartisan $17.6 billion budget is being passed and sent to Governor Katie Hobbs. What does the ranker among Republican legislators tell us about the party today and what 2026 looks like? Our politics panel steps in right now. Democratic consultant Gene Woodbury of Creosote Partners and Republican consultant Chad Haywood of Camelback Strategy Group. Welcome, Gene, and welcome back, Chad, to Sunday Square Off.
Thanks for having me.
Chad, your one-word or three-word impression of this session?
One word, spirited.
Spirited, okay. Gene?
I'll go with two words, ego management.
Ego management. I think we heard that from Warren Peterson a minute ago. Chad, why was Warren Peterson so frustrated?
Well, at the end of the day, with all of the factions that you have, there's a ticking clock, and you needed to get a budget so you avoided a shutdown. We have a very closely divided Republican legislature and a Democrat governor, and leadership can be lonely. At the end of the day, you got to get a deal done. And he got that deal done, and it was frustrating for him to hear misinformation and things holding that deal up.
He was being trolled by Republicans in the House on social media, which is unprecedented. Before we go any further, I do want to put a timestamp on this. We're talking on Friday morning. The Senate is expected to give final approval to the budget today. Send it to the governor. She is expected to sign it. Gene, a few days ago, the Republicans in the House were trying to tee up a shutdown, maybe force Governor Hobbs into a shutdown. Why do you think they caved?
I think they caved because they didn't have the votes. Fundamentally, you've got the Freedom Caucus in the House, and they want to create whatever leverage they can for the long term, but they're not concerned about the short-term consequences and the consequences to people. So it's all about political maneuvering. It's not about the results.
And that kind of gets us to what was going on between the House and Senate. What's the backstory here? Why did the House, their first budget was just rejected as too extreme. They came back and said, look, it's a skinny budget or a shutdown. How did that happen, and what does that tell us about what 2026 could look like for the Republican Party?
Well, part of this is just differences in leadership styles and where the leaders are from. You have a speaker from the West Valley. He's going to have close friends and allies in the West Valley. And then Senate President Peterson, who represents East Valley, but he's also been around there quite a while. So some of that's going to just be factional. At the end of the day, these budgets are about 99% the same as the one the Senate rolled out. And so a lot of the theater, the debate, the back and forth, it was really over about 1% of this final budget.
But again, what does it mean for 2026 where you clearly have two factions of the same party?
Yeah, I think there's a governing caucus. At the end of the day, the House passed this budget, again, which was 99% the same as the Senate's, with 40 votes, right? Only 16 opposed. And so that really kind of shows you who in the Democrat and Republican caucus just felt like this budget wasn't good enough. But 40 votes out of 60 and a handful of members out of town, I think there's a big governing coalition here that knows they got to get the job done with Democrat leadership in the governor's office.
Is this a defeat for Jake Hoffman, Senator Jake Hoffman, head of the Freedom Caucus?
Everyone has a little bit different incentives, and he's from a very red district, and I'm sure there's voters that will like this and voters that are cheering him on. So.
What about Democrats? They've been upset with Governor Hobbs after her first two budgets. Is this a budget they can live with?
This is the first time I've actually heard Democrat members have anything positive to say about the experience. And this is rank and file members. But in the past, even leadership in the Democratic caucus has been shut out of the budget negotiations. And that's completely different this year.
And what is the unfinished business for next year's pre-election session, Gene?
Well, I mean, we're looking at a really difficult situation, even just going into this CD7 election, where we've got 5 counties and a lot of money that we have to spend on that. There's a lot of long-term problems that we're putting a Band-Aid on with this budget, and that we've been putting Band-Aids on with every budget for the past few years. So it's going to be things like victim services funding, elections funding, education funding, just as it has been.
And what about Prop 123 and an attempt to put school choice in the state constitution? Was talked about this session, didn't happen.
Yeah, Prop 123 still has to happen. I think actually the governor, had she gotten something done this time, would have been better for her. Republicans can send this right to the ballot themselves. And it's actually a big win for President Peterson and Speaker Montenegro that they fully funded the ESA program, which I don't think the governor's fond of. So there's a lot in there for Republicans to cheer in this budget.
Okay, we're going to go to national politics. What are the lessons of Zohran Mamdani's victory for Democrats beyond New York City? Let's listen to the winner of the Democratic primary.
I will fight for a city that works for you, that is affordable for you, that is safe for you. I will work to be a mayor you will be proud to call your own.
He just won the Democratic primary, to be clear. Democrats are searching for an identity. Does Zohran Mamdani help give them that identity?
Yeah, Mamdani ran on one word, and that word is affordability. And that's what every Democrat needs to be running on.
Period.
Period.
Full stop.
I know affordability is a big deal. I think Republicans nationally were just given a big gift. Biggest city in the country, it's the top media market. I'll quote Senator John Fetterman, the liberal Democrat. He said, "This is Christmas in July for Republicans." This guy's a registered socialist, and he wants the city to be running grocery stores. Right up the street here in the city of Phoenix is a monument hotel to the city's running an enterprise. Cities aren't very good at it. And so I think you'll see a lot of Republicans talking about him winning and running against it next year.
And to be clear, he's only won the Democratic primary. Sure. There could be a pretty brutal general election in November in New York. Andrew Cuomo might be getting in Curtis Sliwa. Wall Street might be putting up its own candidates. Could be a mess. Now, I noticed you biting your tongue there when Chad was talking about the socialist candidate.
You know, he's 33 years old. He's hot. He's smart. Like, of course people are going to be jealous. I think that's a lot of what it is. It's an exciting candidate, and the other party doesn't really have those.
What part of his agenda do you think would work? Is it just affordability or more than that?
It's the specifics. It's housing affordability by making construction more possible. It's child care. Child care is one of the biggest movers for voters, and it's completely neglected in most campaigns.
But not grocery stores.
I think New York has a different relationship to grocery stores than Arizona.
It really does. It really does. Gene Woodbury, Chad Haywood, thanks so much for joining us. Have a happy 4th of July weekend.
Thank you.
12 Plus is the streaming home of 12 News. You can see all our Sunday Square Off coverage. Download 12 Plus on your Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV devices right now. That's our show for this week. Thanks very much to all of our guests. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoy the Independence Day weekend coming up. And